Christian behavior. In 1663, compute, he's in jail. 3 years he's been in jail. And here's the way he closed the book, writing it for his little flock. Thus have I, in a few words, written to you before I die. He fully expected this was not going to turn out well. So you got to get this straight here. Don't overdo it and don't underdo it. He wasn't tortured in jail. He could do his little handwork and help support his family, and he could have visitors. But don't underdo it either. People were being beheaded in England in those days. Kings had the right to do as they pleased in those days. There wasn't a lot of recourse, so you never knew when the door might swing open. One of you went to England. I forget who this belongs to. But this says Bedford Jail, 1670. It's the peephole on the door in a cell that may have been John Bunyan's. This is the actual thing. 1670, he had 2 more years to serve. So if you want to touch this, I'll leave it up here. And I thank whoever it was who lent this to us, just one of you, for doing it. But this looks authentic to me, and you can look through it there. There's no magnification, so you can see both ways on this one. We get to do the other way. I'll put this here and you can look at it, but if you steal it, God will judge you. Now, what made me think of that? Lost my place here. He's writing this to his people. Oh, I said don't overstate the suffering and don't understate it, because they could come visit him, and it could be that they put their finger right on that and looked in. But he wrote to them, before I die, a word to provoke you to faith and holiness, because I desire that you may have the life that is laid up for all them that believe in the Lord Jesus and love one another when I am deceased. Though then I shall rest from my labors and be in paradise, as through grace I am comfortably assured. Yet it is not there, but here I must do you good. And so he writes these books for his people. Halfway through his imprisonment, he writes, I did often say before the Lord that if to be hanged up presently before their eyes would be means to awake them and confirm them in the truth, I would gladly consent to it. Bunyan gloried in the privilege of being a pastor. He loved the ministry. It flowed from his sufferings. He was jealous. He was jealous for his people to prosper. Now, loving your people is very much a product of suffering, I think. In America, we don't suffer much. We are fun-loving folk. But you know, you can be as fun-loving and as happy-go-lucky and chipper as you want. But as soon as somebody tells you you've got cancer, or as soon as you find out your child is blind, you turn away from the chipper pastors to somebody who is a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief. So I know there's a tremendous pressure on you in many seminars to grow churches by helping people feel chipper and good. And I think perhaps your church may grow more slowly if you're a serious person. And I don't want you to be a somber or glum person. But Your people have got to know, you know, what it feels like if they're going to come tell you what it feels like. There's got to be something they're detecting in you that you've suffered. Otherwise, they're going to go to somebody else because the pain is too great to be dealt with lightly. And as soon as you share with somebody a marital problem or a kid problem or a health problem, you can tell within seconds if they are connecting at any deep level here. And if they're not, the quickest thing you want to do is just say, excuse me, I need somebody who understands. And so your suffering is so important to them. You won't love your people as you ought unless you suffer with Jesus. He said, my heart hath been so wrapped up in the glory of this excellent work that I counted myself more blessed and honored of God by this than if I had made me emperor of the Christian world or the Lord of all the glory of the earth without it. He loved being a pastor to his people, and his suffering endeared him to them. Third observation. Bunyan's suffering opened his understanding to the truth that the Christian life is hard and that following Jesus means having the wind in your face. 1682. 6 years before he dies, he writes a book called The Greatness of the Soul, based on Mark 8:36. What does it profit a man to gain the world and forfeit his soul? For what shall a man give in exchange for his soul? Now, Puritans were good at taking a sentence like that and writing a book about it. They wrote books about sentences like that. And they're not throwing away words. So he writes a book about that verse. And in it, this is what he wants to get across. I'll quote. He's quoting Jesus now. Follow me is not like following some other masters. The wind sits always on my face. And the foaming rage of the sea of this world and the proud and lofty waves thereof do continually beat upon the sides of the bark or boat that myself, my cause, and my followers are in. He, therefore, that will not run hazards and that is afraid to venture a drowning, let him not set foot into this vessel. That's his conception of following Jesus. 2 years later, he wrote a book on John 15:2. Every branch that bears fruit, my Father prunes. And this was his point. It is the will of God that they that go to heaven should go thither hardly or with difficulty. The righteous shall scarcely be saved. That is, they shall, but yet with great difficulty, that it may be the sweeter. So his whole mindset seems out of step with 20th century American evangelicalism to me. The essence of Christianity is hard. The essence of Christianity is you got to fight like crazy, cut off hands, gouge out eyes, deny yourself in order to live upon God only. Because we have, if it was hard in the 17th century to learn to live upon God only, think how hard it is to get into the kingdom of heaven today. It is hard for a rich man to get into the kingdom, and everybody in this room is filthy rich. No exception.